Section 102. Vaisampayana said, O Sauti of Kuru's race, after Chitrangada was slain, his successor Vichitravirya, being a minor, Bhisma ruled the kingdom, placing himself under the command of Satyavati. When he saw that his brother, who was the foremost of intelligent men, attained to majority, Bhisma set his heart upon marrying Vichitravirya. At this time he heard that the three daughters of the king of Kasi, all equal in beauty to the Apsaras, themselves would be married on the same occasion, selecting their husbands at a self-choice ceremony. Then that foremost of car warriors, that vanquisher of all foes, at the command of his mother, went to the city of Varanasi in a single chariot. There Bhishma, the son of Santanu, saw that innumerable monarchs had come from all directions, and there he also saw those three maidens that would select their own husbands. And when the assembled kings were each being mentioned by name, Bhishma chose those maidens on behalf of his brother, and taking them upon his chariot, Bhishma, that first of smitters in battle, addressed the kings, O monarch, and said in a voice deep as the roar of the clouds, The wise have directed that when an accomplished person have been invited, a maiden may be bestowed on him, decked with ornaments and along with many valuable presents. Others again may bestow their daughters by accepting a couple of kine. Some again bestow their daughters by taking a fixed sum, and some take away maidens by force. Some wed with the consent of the maidens, some by drugging them into consent, and some by going on to the maidens' parents and obtaining their sanction. Some again obtain wives as presents for assisting at sacrifices. Of these, the learned always applaud the eighth form of marriage. Kings, however, speak highly of the Swayamvara, the fifth form as above, and themselves wed according to it. But the sages have said that wife is dearly to be prized who is taken away by force, after the slaughter of opponents, from amidst the concourse of princes and kings, invited to a self-choice ceremony. Therefore, ye monarchs, I bear away these maidens, hence by force. Strive ye to the best of your might, to vanquish me or to be vanquished. Ye monarchs, I stand here resolved to fight. The Kuru prince, endued with great energy, thus addressing the assembled monarchs and the king of Kasi, took upon his car those maidens, and having taken them up, he sped his chariot away, challenging the invited kings to a fight. The challenged monarchs then all stood up, slapping their arms and biting their nether lips in wrath, and loud was the din produced, as in a great hurry they began to cast off their ornaments and put on their armor, and the motion of their ornaments and armor, O Janamejaya, brilliant as these were, resembled meteoric flashes in the sky, and with bows contracted with eyes red with rage, the monarchs moved in impatience, their armor and ornaments dazzling or waving with their agitated steps. The charioteers soon brought handsome cars with fine horses. Harnessed thereto, those splendid warriors, then equipped with all kinds of weapons, rode on those cars, and with uplifted weapons pursued the retreating chief of the Kurus. Then, O Bharata, occurred the terrible encounter between those innumerable monarchs on one side and the Kuru warrior alone on the other, and the assembled monarchs threw at their foe 10,000 arrows at the same time. Bhishma, however, speedily checked those numberless arrows before they could come at him by means of a shower of his own arrows, as innumerable as the down on the body. Then those kings surrounded him from all sides and rained arrows on him like masses of clouds, showering on the mountain breast. But Bhisma, arresting with his shafts the course of that arrowy downpour, pierced each of the monarchs with 3 shafts. The latter, on the other hand, pierced Bhisma, each with 5 shafts. But, O king, Bhisma checked those by his prowess and pierced each of the contending kings with 2 shafts. The combat became so fierce, with that dense showers of arrows and other missiles, that it looked very like the encounter between the celestials and the asuras of old, and men of courage, who took no part in it, were struck with fear to even look at the scene. Bhisma cut off with his arrows on the field of battle bows and flagstaffs and coats of mail, and human heads by hundreds and thousands. As such was his terrible prowess and extraordinary lightness of hand, and such the skill with which he protected himself, that the contending car warriors, though his enemies, began to applaud him loudly. Then that foremost of all wielders of weapons, having vanquished in battle all those monarchs, pursued his ways towards the capital of the Bharatas, taking those maidens with him. It was then, O king, that mighty car warrior, King Salya of immeasurable prowess, from behind summoned Bhisma, the son of Santanu, to an encounter, and desirous of obtaining the maidens, he came upon Bhisma like a mighty leader of a herd of elephants, rushing upon another of his kind, and tearing with his tusks the latter's hips at the sight of a female elephant in heat. And Salya of mighty arms, moved by wrath, addressed Bhisma and said, "Stay, stay." Then Bhisma, that tiger among men, that grinder of hostile armies, provoked by those words, flamed up in wrath like a blazing fire, bow in hand, and brow furrowed into wrinkles, he stayed on his car, in obedience to Kshatriya usage, having checked its course in expectation of the enemy. All the monarchs, seeing him stop, stood there to become spectators of the coming encounter between him and Salya. The two then began to exhibit their prowess upon each other, like roaring bulls of great strength, at the sight of a cow in rut. Then that foremost of men, King Salya, covered Bhisma, the son of Santanu, with hundreds and thousands of swift-winged shafts. And those monarchs, seeing Salya thus covering Bhisma at the outset with innumerable shafts, wondered much and uttered shouts of applause, beholding his lightness of hand in combat. And crowd of regal spectators became very glad and applauded Salya greatly, that subjugator of hostile towns. Bhisma then, on hearing those shouts of the Kshatriyas, became very angry and said, "Stay, stay." In wrath, he commanded his charioteer, saying, "Lead thou my car to where Salya is, so that I may slay him instantly, as Garuda slays a serpent." Then the Kuru chief fixed the Varuna weapon on his bowstring, and with it afflicted the 4 steeds of King Salya. And O tiger among kings, the Kuru chief then, warding off with his weapons those of his foe, slew Salya's charioteer. Then that first of men, Bhisma, the son of Santanu, fighting for the sake of those damsels, slew with the Haindra weapon the noble steeds of his adversary. He then vanquished that best of monarchs, but left him with his life. O bull of Bharata's race, Salya, after his defeat, returned to his kingdom and continued to rule it virtuously. And O conqueror of hostile towns, the other kings also, who had come to witness self-choice ceremony returned to their own kingdoms. That foremost of smitters, Bhisma, after defeating those monarchs, set out with those damsels for Hastinapura, whence the virtuous Kuru prince Vichitravirya ruled the earth like that of best of monarchs. This is father Santanu, and O king, passing through many forests, rivers, hills and woods, abounding with trees, he arrived at the capital in no time, of immeasurable prowess in battle, the son of the ocean-going Ganga, having slain numberless foes in battle, without a scratch on his own person, brought the daughters of the king of Kashi unto the Kurus, as tenderly if they were his daughters-in-law or younger sisters, her daughters. And Bhisma of mighty arms, impelled by the desire of benefiting his brother, having by his prowess brought them thus, then offered those maidens possessing every accomplishment unto Vichitravirya, conversant with the dictates of virtue, the son of Santanu, having achieved such an extraordinary feat according to kingly custom, then began to make preparations for his brother's wedding. And when everything about the wedding had been settled by Bhisma, in consultation with Satyavati, the eldest daughter of the king of Kashi, with a soft smile told him these words: At heart I had chosen the king of Soba for my husband. He had in his heart accepted me for his wife. This was also approved by my father at the self-choice ceremony. Also I would have chosen him as my lord. Thou art conversant with all the dictates of virtue. Knowing all this, do as thou likest. Thus addressed by that maiden in the presence of the Brahmanas, the heroic Bhisma began to reflect as to what should be done. As he was conversant with the rules of virtue, he consulted with the Brahmanas who had mastered the Vedas, and permitted Amba, the eldest daughter of the ruler of Kashi, to do as she liked. But he bestowed with due rights the two other daughters, Ambika and Ambalika, on his younger brother Vichitravirya. And though Vichitravirya was virtuous and abstemious, yet proud of youth and beauty, he soon became lustful after his marriage. And both Ambika and Ambalika were all tall statured and of the complexion of moited gold, and their heads were covered with black curly hair, and their fingernails were high and red. Their lips were fat and round, and their breasts full and deep, and endued with every auspicious mark. The amiable young ladies considered themselves to be wedded to a husband who was everywhere worthy of themselves, and extremely loved and respected Vichitravirya. And Vichitravirya also endued with the prowess of the celestials and the beauty of the twin Ashwins, could steal the heart of any beautiful woman. And the prince passed 7 years uninterruptedly in the company of his wives. He was attacked while yet in the prime of youth with disease. Friends and relatives in consultation with one another tried to effect a cure, but in spite of all efforts, the Kuru prince died, setting like the evening sun. The virtuous Bhisma then became plunged into anxiety and grief, and in consultation with Satyavati, caused the obsequial rites of the deceased to be performed by learned priests and the several of the Kuru race. Thus ends the 102nd section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva.